YouTube, welcome back to my channel, Taylor Talks Tales. Today I have a book review for you guys. It is on Ruth Ware's The Turn of the Key. I'm going to read the inside flap for you really quick and then we're going to get started on the review. When Rowan Kane stumbles across the ad, she's looking for something else completely. But it seems like too good an opportunity to miss. A live-in nanny post with a staggeringly generous salary. And when she arrives at Heatherbray House, she is smitten by a luxurious smart home fitted out with all modern conveniences, by the beautiful Scottish Highlands, and by this picture-perfect family. What she doesn't know is that she's stepping into a nightmare, one that will end with a child dead and herself in prison awaiting trial for murder. Writing to her lawyer from prison, she struggles to explain the unraveling events that led to her incarceration. It wasn't just the constant surveillance from the cameras installed around the house, or the malfunctioning technology that woke the household with booming music or turned the lights off at the worst possible time. It wasn't just the girls, who turned out to be a far cry from the immaculately behaved model children she met at her interview. It wasn't even the way she was left alone for weeks at a time, with no adults around apart from the enigmatic handyman, Jack Wright. It was everything. She knows she's made mistakes. She admits that she lied to obtain the post, and that her behavior toward the children wasn't always ideal. She's not innocent by any means, but, she maintains, she's not guilty. At least not of murder, which means someone else is. Alright, so this is my second Ruth Ware book that I've read in the last couple of months. I read In a Dark, Dark Wood back in October, and to be completely honest, I did not really care for that one. It actually made it on my list of least favorite / most disappointing reads of 2019. But I like to give authors a second, sometimes even a third chance, because you never know if they'll come up with something that you end up liking, or if their writing has improved, because I do believe that when you write, the more you improve. An example of an author I gave a second chance to was Maggie Stiefvater. I did not care for her Shiver series at all. I only read the first one and just was done. And then a few years later, the Scorpio Races came out, read it, loved it, and then the Raven Boys came out and read it and loved it. So I wanted to do the same with Ruth Ware because I have heard that she's a good thriller author. So I gave her another shot. And I'm really glad I did, because this was a very enjoyable read. It's very fast-paced. It's definitely a page-turner. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of it in particular. There's a lot of setup with, creepy imagery. There's a creepy doll and a hidden room. All of this inside this Victorian house that's been remodeled, so it's almost like a fusion between a Victorian house and this very modern house, where the front's very Victorian and the back is this just glass and steel house and very modernized. And I thought the exploration of in this it's called the Happy app, but I think it's sort of supposed to be a giant Siri or an Alexa or something, and the exploration of that and the invasion of privacy and the frustrations of living in a smart home and having to rely on your phone and rely on technology that may or may not work, I thought was very interesting. I also really enjoyed the way this was told. It's basically Rowan, the main character, writing to a lawyer. She's in jail, so from the get-go, somebody dies, it's a child, and she gets thrown into jail, and she's just trying to write to this lawyer, proving her innocence, and then it just goes from there. I am giving it a 3.75 out of 5 star though, despite me enjoying it, and I definitely will admit this is a lot better of a book than In a Dark, Dark Wood. The writing is vastly improved, the characterizations are a lot better, the characters are a lot more fleshed out, they're a lot more believable, all of that, but I did have an issue with the ending. I felt like it was rushed, and it wasn't satisfying, and there wasn't a lot of closure with a lot of the characters, where it was very much what happened kind of thing. I was getting kind of worried when we were only a few pages from the end, and I'm wait. And then the reveal happens, and I did see it coming, so that was a bit of a disappointment, because I was hoping for some big, cool thing. There were a couple smaller plot twists in the book, some twists and turns that were happening that I did enjoy a lot more. So it definitely, keeps you going. It's a very fast-paced, enjoyable read. And the ending wasn't such a letdown that I was oh, this ruined the book for me. It didn't ruin the book. It just, it took it from, I was going to give it a 4.5 star, and then I bumped it to 4.25, and then the ending just, made it to be a slightly under 4-star read. I rated it 4-star on Goodreads because you can't do the quarter and half star, but ultimately was a 3.75 out of 5. There were also a couple things from but if there are cameras in here, would there be cameras on the outside? Wouldn't it capture this, that? But I still enjoyed it. There's some interesting kind of parts of the grounds that I thought were really cool. There's a poison garden, which I thought was neat. I definitely want to check this house out. It sounds really cool. I wouldn't want to live in there because technology and I don't always get along, and I probably would be very frustrated trying to handle this house, when it takes 10 buttons to turn on a coffee maker, and constantly being watched would really freak me out. But I would still want to check out the grounds for sure. This poison garden sounded very interesting, although it didn't play as much of a role. Some of the events, they were very cool, and they had this set up for this very creepy atmosphere, but it didn't ultimately, some things just didn't tie in, which is okay. I mean, it's not like all books have to have everything tying together, but it was just sort of this plot line that was happening, and then ultimately, I thought maybe it was going to tie into the ending, and it didn't. But that was okay. It was still a neat setup, and I definitely would not want to nanny any of these children, except for maybe the baby. She seemed to be fine. Funny enough, I actually worked as a nanny for about 4 months in between my first and second vet clinic jobs for one little girl, and she's very sweet, a little headstrong, and so when I was reading this, I'm just oh yeah, I kind of get how exhausting it can be. I know in this book there's basically the main character is getting sleep deprived because she can't sleep at night because the happy app in the house is just constantly freaking out, and she's who's doing this, what's going on? So she also has that element of thinking that she might be losing her sanity, and you just do feel kind of tired and sympathize with her, where ooh, taking care of kids all day, especially the 2 little girls. So there are 4 girls. There's a teenager, then there's the 2, there's an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a baby. And the 8-year-old and 5-year-old are a handful, especially the 8-year-old. I'm ooh, yeah. So you definitely feel for her dealing with these kids, but there are also elements of she's not who she says she is, a little bit peppered in, which I thought was kind of actually a cool setup, because funny enough, I actually didn't really read the inside flap going into this, so for me it was sort of a, I didn't know much about it except for I knew it was about a nanny and a child died, and that was it. So I actually liked doing that, just kind of going in blind. I do think it added to the enjoyment factor as well. So ultimately, I think it's worth checking out. It is a fun thriller, and who knows, maybe you might enjoy the ending more than me. I do know that there are some people who are wow, this is really cool, and didn't see it coming at all, or some people who didn't mind a very quick wrap-up or loose ends. For me, though, because I read thrillers a lot and have pretty high expectations of them, I did ultimately wanted more from it. But it's way better than In a Dark, Dark Wood. It is opening me up to possibly reading some more Ruth Ware books. I'm definitely, not opposed to it. And I've heard, I think it's The Death of Mrs. Castaway is supposed to be her best one. And I've heard mixed things about The Woman in Cabin 10, I think is the book. But I'll give her another shot. So anyway, thank you so much for watching my video. Please comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know if you've read this book, and if so, what you thought about it. At some point I might go back and do a books discussion on this, so we can talk spoilers and talk about that ending, and some of maybe a couple of the implausible things that may have occurred in the book, and all that. So thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Please, enjoy your weekend, and happy reading.